20 minutes. We're about halfway done, folks, so I hope you're in for the long ride here. So, the next thing is really big, the emergency binder. And nowadays, this can be the emergency thumb drive, little thumb drive here, a little USB thing. Um, but this is copies of all sorts of important papers that you have in one place. So if, God forbid, you have to, run out of the house for some reason, the floodwaters are coming in and, a boat is coming down the road to get you, at least you have these. And I put a list of the important papers you should have in your binder. So the first thing is insurance papers. You want copies of your homeowner's policy, your car insurance, your health insurance, life insurance, boat, whatever sort of insurances you have, flood insurance. You want copies of that, either paper copies or a digital copy on a thumb drive. So if you have to leave your house because it's being destroyed for some reason, you have the insurance, information so you can start the process right away. That makes life so much easier, folks, than just calling like Allstate and say, yeah, my name is such and such and I have a policy with you and I know nothing about it except that I send you a check. If you can give the policy number and all that, way ahead of the game. And I'll tell you, the person on the other end of the phone will be so thankful you have that sort of information that their whole service towards you will be at a higher level. So insurance papers, good thing to have. Second thing, equally important, health records, especially if you have kids. One of the issues when the Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and a bunch of families were evacuated to Houston, a bunch of these kids did not have copies of their immunization records with them. So they were forced to undergo a whole bunch of immunizations again. So in your emergency binder, you want health records. One of the main things is a copy of the immunization records for your kids and even you, because that's really important, especially if you've had a tetanus shot. When was the last time you had a tetanus shot? So immunization records, prescriptions. Usually when you get a prescription, there's a little pamphlet now that they give you with the name and the dose and the information and which doctor prescribed it. So not what you can just take to the drugstore and get a refill, but all the information that speeds up the process of getting a refill in a situation, especially if, God forbid, you end up at a Red Cross shelter or something like that. They have a nurse on duty that can work with you to try and figure out the best way of getting these medications replaced. So copies of the prescriptions, what it is, how much you take, who prescribed it, that sort of information. Like I said, the little, the package of little information that everyone just ignores and throws out when they get a prescription, keep that, put it in the binder, scan it, put it on the thumb drive. It makes your life so much easier. Like I said, I volunteer at the Red Cross shelter, and that was one of the things that caused people a lot of problems, is they knew they had some sort of prescription drug, but they didn't know much about it other than the name, and usually they were pronouncing it wrong. So if you have that copies of that information on hand, so much better. A business card from your doctor, a business card from your dentist, if you, an oncologist, dermatologist, any sort of medical professionals you see, on a regular basis, even once a year or whatever, your kids' pediatricians, that sort of thing, have copies of their business cards. So you have the information, again, of who to contact to get these prescriptions refilled. It's a lot easier than trying to scan through on your cell phone when there's no cell phone service because all the cell phone towers are without power. So just a simple, ideally a paper copy, more so than a thumb drive, but best case, both. But so you can get a hold of the doctor's office so he or she can reissue the prescription so you can get your medications again. Government documentations, there's a whole bunch of things there. So copy of your driver's license, copy of your passport, copy of your birth certificate, or even, a copy, an official birth certificate type thing. Makes life so much easier. Social Security card, proof of residence. When I say proof of residence, I mean something like a recent utility bill, a water bill, or something that shows so and so lived at such and such address, because a lot of times you're going to need proof of that for different government aid. And so just the last water bill or last power bill you got, throw it in there. Ideally, every 6 months, swap it out. Usually they're okay with it, sometimes even a year old, but some sort of proof of residence. So those are the main government things. Licenses and proofs that you exist and live in a particular spot, really, 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 really important to have copies of. Especially in the case if like a flood or something that is damaging your house and you can't stay in your house. Oh yeah, even the concealed handgun license or fishing license, all those sort of things you should have. Okay, next thing, contact information. We already talked about doctors and dentists and all that, so have his or her information. But you also want the contact information for friends and family and coworkers and who to contact at your workplace to tell them, hey, my house is destroyed, I'm not going to be in for a while. Especially in the Houston area, a lot of companies have a hotline now for when a hurricane is hitting that you can call in and report to. It's really good to have paper copies of these. And if you're really good, you get the paper copy laminated to make it that much more durable. But by having the ability to call your friends when the shelter phone comes online or something, or your family, and let them know, hey, I'm okay. Or if you were at work and ended up at a different shelter than your family, you can kind of track around and get this information. One thing you should do, like in our family, if something happens and the family gets separated because due to a storm or something like Houston, we all know to call my parents up in Minnesota, so we can transfer messages to figure out where each other ended up. So it's good to have some out of state or out of the area, out of the zone of destruction sort of place that everyone in the family knows how to contact. So if you do get separated, how to find where each other is. But paper copies of that are really, really important. I mean, if you drop your phone and you have to borrow someone else's phone, it's unlikely they have your wife's number, hopefully, at least. Especially if it's a complete stranger, that would be very telling. Sorry, I got a funny look there. Okay. Friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, workplace, good. Local police, local fire department, local animal control. One of the big problems in our neighborhood during Hurricane Ike is, one, there were a number of dogs that suddenly appeared out of nowhere that no one was claiming. But also we had a number of raccoon and possum incidents. And so it's, especially in a grid down situation, the animal control may have a hard time getting there. But in a worst case scenario, at least alerting them, especially to dogs, that there is a problem, they will put you on the list and work their way to you. So animal control is good to have. And of course, like I said, the fire department, the police department, just in case, especially if you end up evacuating, you can call the local fire department, call the local police, and see, if nothing else, when you can be back into the area. Usually there is some other number, or the Red Cross can help you figure that out so you don't bother the police, but it's still something just to keep in mind to have in the emergency binder. Poison control. I'm probably the only person that has poison control on speed dial, but the phone number for poison control is 1-800-222-1222. It's just something you need to know. Just again, if something, eat something wrong, swallow something wrong, it's still good to be able to get a hold of poison control. Now, this is assuming there's phones working, but this is, again, something. The nice thing about this emergency binder with all these phone numbers, if something happens, you already have the number. You go running to the binder rather than panicking and trying to figure out on your phone, my kid just drank windshield wiper fluid. What's the number? 911, you have it there, you go there, you call the number, you're good to go. Another important number to have, your waste pickup and sewage company, whoever picks up your garbage. If nothing else, to find out when they are going to come by. Usually, like when a hurricane hits in Houston, all the garbage pickup gets thrown off and suddenly the schedule gets weird and people are putting their garbage out and animals are getting into it. And it's just a big mess. So at least knowing when the garbage is going to will be picked up next, helps everyone do a better job of keeping the place clean and not letting, diseases and stuff spread. So they know, don't put their, plastic bag of diarrhea and food scraps down at the end of the sidewalk where something can tear into it. You got to keep it in the garbage can, keep it in your garage until the garbage is coming, just to keep other things from getting into the garbage and spreading them around and causing a bigger problem. Electric company, gas company, either to let them know that, you need to shut the power off, or later on when you can go back to your house. A lot of time the gas company will have turned off the gas and you need to turn it back on. It's easy to do if you read the instructions, but the gas companies really like to send someone to your house, if possible, to relight your water heater, things like that. Another big thing, the credit card companies. God forbid you lose your wallet or something like that happens. You want a copy of the phone number, and that you can call your specific credit card company, give them the number, and get things rolling there, get it replaced or whatever, or report it stolen, get it stopped, and be able to do that. Because I'm sure most people don't have that. They think okay. Mrs. Weather loses her wallet a lot, and so we've gone through canceling credit cards fairly often, and so it's a pain if you don't have the phone number and so forth. So we have copies of the phone numbers written down, so when it happens again, we're good to go. Yeah, so just something to keep in mind. Your credit card number is written down so you know who to call for that. Another thing is the call before you dig thing. So after the destruction, you're starting to rebuild, and you have gas lines, you have power lines running through your backyard. And so it's really important to know where those are before you start digging holes in your backyard. So this is kind of after the grid down situation, the grid is back up and you're starting to do repairs. You call the call before you dig if you plan on digging any holes in your backyard, and have it marked where those, the things you need to look out for are. Because if you cut your power line while you're digging a hole to make a latrine or something like that, it's ideally it beforehand, but even afterwards, if you're are doing some sort of construction work and you cut a gas line, a water line, a power line, it's a big mess. So just call before you dig. Oh, Joe, good question. Saline solution, if you use to clean contacts with, that's really good. If you are the type that uses contact, thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, so the saline solution is a good thing to have on hand. Yeah, Chris, one definite bonus of a hard copy binder is you don't need access to someone else's computer. You don't need electricity. You have it there. That being said, you do have some information that if it got into the wrong hands, could lead to identity theft. So you want to keep the binder very inconspicuous, very hidden, so no one can go, ooh, because occasionally bad people end up in the Red Cross shelter. We have people whose job is to just stand and watch over and make sure, people aren't messing around with someone's bunk that they're not supposed to be. But, every so often things happen. So yeah, that's always a problem, security versus usefulness. So Chris Martin says, I also send this information to my parents in another state. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. So, Chris, thank you. It didn't even occur to me to make sure that our out-of-state contacts have copies of all these important phone numbers, so that even if you do lose it, that's why I like Chris as my friend, because every so often he comes up with this brilliant idea. Cool, yeah. So if you want to have an extra layer of security, have some out-of-state friend or maybe two different out-of-state friends with this binder, so that you can call them and get the information rather than having this hard copy binder sitting there. Of course, then you need to make sure they don't lose the binder. They know where the binder is when you phone call, that they're home when you call, but it's another way of doing it. Excellent, Chris. Okay, so the emergency binder, your insurance, your financial information, medical information, prescriptions, anything like that. Eyeglass prescriptions, anything that you may need to replace to get back to the quality of life you had before the disaster happened. Very, very, very useful. Yes, Kevin. Yeah, a will and like a do not resuscitate or use extreme measures, things like that. Very, very important also. And even not just if you're alone. I mean, even families, like I said, if you end up separated because, something happened while, someone was at work, or the wife was at work and you were at work and the kids were at school and all three, end up at different places. Of course, then it's hard to get a hold of the will, but, at least maybe a neighbor or something like that can grab it. But yeah, that sort of information is really, really, really good. Now I want to talk about light.